So while the Fury is on the lift, getting ready to get back on the road, I decided to bring this inside. And as I was driving it in, I've had this problem where the clutch isn't grabbing smoothly. I think it is the flywheel, like it's got some contaminants or it's uneven or burn. And initially when you drive it, you had to kind of treat it like a tractor, like no RPMs, just kind of get it engaged and then you could give it gas. While I was driving it in the garage this time, even in first gear, I could not get it to not bounce violently. So this is going to be my daily driver. So I need to get this to be able to drive easily, smoothly, without worry. So I took some time last night to take a look at the transmission and the clutch, and this happened. So this is a 435 4-speed manual, and I went ahead and pulled it, and I'm looking at the I need to take the bell housing off and the pressure plate and the clutch and all that jazz. I need to pull it so that I can take a look and see what parts I need to order. And so that's what I'm doing now. First thing I noticed is there is oil everywhere. There's even oil, what looks to be inside, and a bunch of garbage. So I don't know if I have like a rear main seal issue and it's leaking in there and making things not want to slide well, or the friction on the flywheel's not smooth. But yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and take this off and take a look and see what else I got. All right, so got the flywheel off and the bell housing and all that stuff. And check this out. This is literally a rat's nest in the bell housing behind the flywheel. Let's see if I can show you. So this is just like rat's nest stuff that's in here. So I'll clean all this out. Let me show you everything else. All right, so let's take a look at what we got here. Bell housing super dirty. Let's see what the clutch looks like. Yeah, there's missing pivot points. It doesn't look like it was wearing necessarily evenly, but I definitely feel like this is a clutch that needs to be replaced. I'm no expert, but I mean, it's kind of like the brakes or the tires when it starts going flush. So definitely going to order one of those. And Rock Auto was saying that the clutch was an 11-inch disc clutch, which I would say it is. So now I know what to order. I'm just going to order everything. It was like $128 for that, the clutch, and the pilot bearing, and the pivot. What do you call it? Goes on the pressure plate. That's what that is, right? Pressure plate or spring plate, and forks. So, and this heavy bugger was probably the cause of the jerking. It's just couldn't get a smooth transition. It would either grab or release. So I will see about getting this resurfaced, I think, because I couldn't actually buy one. So hopefully I can get this resurfaced and reuse this. So got everything I need. I got everything out. I need to clean up my mess, bag all my bolts, and separate them by parts so that I can put them back together and do a lot of cleaning. I will try to get the transmission 435 out of there so I can clean that up and maybe put a coat of paint on it because, you know, why not? I think I have a new OCD obsession, something like that. But took the bell housing off. It was super dirty, crusted. I didn't even know that it was blue. But I took a power washer to it, got some of the junk off, but then hit it with some brake clean and some engine degreaser and put it in that bucket and just kind of went to town, just like I did with the engine. So this is the first coat of POR 15, and then I'm going to paint it blue. All right, waited a couple hours and applied the first coat of blue. One more coat of blue tonight, and she'll be ready to be installed tomorrow. Looks like my clutch is supposed to come in tomorrow, so that could be perfect. Okay, so my parts came in for the clutch, but as you saw in the video, there is oil, grime, and everything back there. It is a complete mess. So I also purchased a rear main seal, and I'm in the process of, while everything's apart, this is really the time to do it. So I'm holding up the back end of the engine with these things that I got from Harbor Freight a long time ago I think it was for the BMW. And it's working really good. It's little 318 is nice and light, or seems light. This thing is, I actually wasn't even sure if it was still if it was connected properly because it was so easy to turn it and get the back end up. But let me show you what it looks like underneath. Okay, so I had to use a bell housing bolt here because I could not get the stud to go into the head. But so now I should have, I think I'm gonna have plenty of room to take this pan off and get to the rear main seal. So next step is to take all of these nasty studs out on the oil pan and get this oil pan out. Okay, so I got the oil pan off, and here's what she looks like underneath. So next up is the oil pump, and then I'm going to take off the rear, the rear main. Well, I have to say, taking out the rear main seal of this was not fun at all. It is the rope style, and it just fell apart. I originally tried to poke it through to get it to grab enough on one side. I couldn't get it to budge. It just literally, the hole punch just went all the way in, dangerously close to touching metal, but I stopped before that. So then I loosened up some of the mains, or all the mains, so that I could get just a little bit of wiggle room. And I don't know if this is normal. I don't know if this is helpful in any way, but one thing I did is I had a zip tie that's a little bit, it's not one of the cheap ones. It's fairly strong. I could get it between the block and the rope seal, and I could, if I put my fingers close enough to the edge, I could shove it in. And I got to a point where I had gone all the way around on the inside, between the block and the rope. And then I went in on the other side where it was on the crank and the rope. So it was fully detached from both sides of what I was trying to get it out. I still could not get it out. So then I was using some of this copper tubing just to, at that point the rope was kind of like bunched up in spots and just a big mess. And this part of this copper tubing, I just kind of slid it around, and it was, like I said, it was no fun. At one point, I was using this to pull out little strands one at a time. Probably spent well over an hour kind of digging it out. And then at one point, this came out, and I'm like, okay, now I'm getting somewhere. So then I trimmed the sides of this, I don't know if you can see, of the zip tie, so that it would fit between the crank and the block. And then as I passed it through, I was just pulling out chunks of rope one at a time for a very long time. But enough of that sad story. It is out and it's clean. I did shoot some air through it too to make sure that anything else is out. So here's the new, it's a Felpro seal, and you put it in so that the big side, you know, as you look at it from dead on, this side's bigger, and the instructions say this side goes towards the front of the engine. So it would go in, this side is the rear of the engine, and then that's the front of the engine. It goes in like this, so that I'm assuming as it builds pressure, it's going to push the seal against the crankshaft. But enough of that. I'm going to go ahead and I got some engine lube just to kind of lube this surface up so that it's not just rubber on metal, and try to get this thing to seal up well. Cam had a good suggestion for me too, to kind of clock this so it's not exactly, this seam is not the exact same seam that the main is going to have. So just kind of clock it just a little bit. So I'll be doing that too. And time to start putting everything back together, finally. Okay, so my clutch kit came with a new pilot bearing. So I'm going to remove the old one, and with everything I've seen with the rear main seal, who knows how long this has been in here. I bought this kit a while ago when I was doing some of the transmission stuff. It's you know, getting the bushings out, or the bearings out of the transmission are kind of a pain in the butt. And this is one of those like puller kits where you know, this is kind of expands. You slide it in, thread the screw in, it expands, and then like you could use the slide hammer, or it also comes with this puller, two-pronged puller. And I have it in there now, and I was able to get it to move, so I thought, no, why don't I go ahead and record this? So I bought this off of Amazon, and I was originally going to use the old grease and socket and pound it through, but I think this is a much more consistent way to get it out. So I'll let you see what I got. All right, so I know this thing looks massive because it's super close, but just puts a clamp on it. I wasn't sure it was going to expand enough to get on the bushing, because it was like the higher size was just a little bit too thick. And I was like, well, I don't know if this one's going to do, but it is. And you can see it's starting to push it out. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this just by turning this nut, and it's just basically going to pull the pilot bearing out. All right, so I got the new pilot bearing in. I tapped it in with the same bearing kit I'll show you here in a second, and kind of went right in. Not too easy, not too hard. All right, so here's what I used to tap it in. Again, I got this also when I was working on the transmission, just to replace all the bearings, Brass? Are they brass? I don't know. Anyway, bought this on Amazon as well, and it makes things a lot easier. All right, so one thing, you're probably wondering why I didn't finish the oil pan. So the oil pump and the oil pan. The pan has these, it's an older style type of a gasket that goes around here, and it has these little knobs that go in there, which is not the kit that I bought, which I don't see it right now. But when I looked at it on Rock Auto, they said anything from 1970 and up is supposed to use the newer style oil pan. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means that this engine has been swapped and it's an older one. Oh, here it is. For the record, I did paint the oil pan because I had a little bit of that paint left. But the other one would slip over this and have two of these little knobs fit in on the side. But this version has a bunch, and then these. So I ordered it on Jags, but because it's Memorial Day weekend, it's not even going to ship till tomorrow. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the flywheel. But I mean, the oil pan's looking pretty good. It'll look good when it's in there. So next up is the flywheel. So as you see, I have the clutch, the pressure plate, and I installed the oil pan. and oil pump. So all that is back together again. So now I need to just slide the transmission out and get the bell housing and the lever and all that jazz installed on that, and then install the bell housing with the transmission. And that should kind of wrap this whole process up. I should be able to take, of course, put the exhaust back together, but I should be able to take this for a test drive, and it should be noticeably improved. And I have a shiny oil pan. It's the only thing shiny on here, but it's shiny. Okay, so I'm sitting under the truck, and I'm looking at the transmission, and I'm looking at the freshly painted bell housing and the freshly painted oil pan, and I'm like, I can't just leave it that way. That would be half-ass. As you may already have heard, we like to go full ass. So I spent the afternoon degreasing, pretty much doing the same thing I did for all the other parts, with degreaser and then some brake clean. Got it clean, and I put one coat of POR 15. So sorry if I'm talking slow. It's probably the fumes. I don't know if you can see. It was originally painted orange, so that's confusing to me. So I don't know if there was an engine swap or a transmission swap, or would they have put, I don't think they would have put an orange transmission with a Plymouth Blue or Chrysler Blue engine block. So I don't know, it seemed weird, but I don't want to paint it orange. I don't want to have that crazy thing underneath. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do another coat of POR 15 black. And I want to see, I know they say that POR 15 is not UV resistant, but it shouldn't be getting any ultraviolet rays unless, it's, I guess I just want to see, will the paint have, no, it's not going to have a problem. Overthinking things again. So I'm going to put a second coat on just to make it nice and thick and strong. And then I'm going to install the bell housing on it and the clutch arm, the pilot bearing, all that jazz, and get this thing back in. I may lightly polish the top a little bit, but probably not. This is all going to be hidden anyway. But you would not have believed how much dirt was on top of this thing. Like everything on the top side, because it was a farm truck, there was gravel, the buckshot gravel, similar to like the cat litter under there, and seeds of some kind. They didn't look like soybeans, but I don't know what kind of seeds they were, but they were caked in there, and it took me all day to get this out. So looks like my Tupperware bucket is on its last leg, but that's fine because this is the last thing I need to paint on this before I get this thing back together. All right, here's what we got. We've got the bell housing on the transmission, and I got the throwout bearing and clutch fork. All the bearing stuff is new, and put some high temp lithium grease on there to have everything flow nice and smooth. I still need to put some on the tip for the pilot bearing, but I keep putting it on there, and then I keep touching it, and it all comes off. So, but I think this is looking pretty good. I kind of like the black and blue on there, and most of that is just so that if it leaks, when it leaks, then I can see it. I know the black will be hard to necessarily spot, but I should be able to trace it back because it'll be shinier than the rest, and I'll have to kind of keep an eye on it for a little bit. So need to figure out a way to get this on the floor jack and installed, because this sucker is super heavy. This is why I wish I had the lift. This is probably the heaviest, one of the heavier transmissions that I've messed around with, and I'm on the ground. I don't know, I'll figure something out. All right, so here's what I came up with. I needed to get some height to get the jack underneath the transmission. Once I get that, I can raise it up to where I need to. So because this truck sits so high, I put 2 tie downs. Yeah, I wish I should have grabbed the beefier ones, the one for cars, but this thing isn't that heavy, so that it, I'm double strapping 2 separate tie downs, so should be fine. So I'm just gonna lift it up until I can get the jack underneath it, and then hopefully slide this transmission in. Just as I thought, I was making good progress, and yesterday I was expecting to have the transmission installed, but for the life of me, I cannot get that transmission to seat on the block. Check my angles. Here, let me show you what I got. All right, so I'm underneath the truck. I checked my angles, and you can see I've got like 1/2 inch to go. I have been pushing, wiggling, doing all sorts of things. Yes, I do have the bolts on, but that's just for alignment. I can loosen them with my fingers by wiggling this kind of stuff. So I'm not using the bolts to try to get it to screw on, but I've tried moving the crank. I've tried wiggling, changing the angles, blah, blah, blah. I cannot get this to seat on there. I probably spent about 4 hours last night trying to get this on here. So I'm kind of stuck here. I'm guessing either the pilot bearing has an issue. I did put a scope in there to kind of, I pulled the transmission back out and ran my camera scope, endoscope, I guess it's called, and I didn't see any kind of damage or wear, which would make me think it's just the clutch alignment thing. At one point, I even tried putting this on with a ratchet strap and getting it to release the clutch, and I could get it to spin, but there is something amiss here. It is just not wanting to go on. So at this point, I thought about it last night, had to step away because I was getting frustrated. I'm at a point now where I think I need to pull the transmission back out, take off the pressure plate and the clutch, and then see if it'll slide on. Then I know I don't want to remove the pilot bearing if it's not the problem. If it'll slide on without the clutch and the pressure plate, then I know that it was just an alignment issue, and then I just gotta redo it and try something else. Oh, I don't know if I want to show you this, because it just proves what I've been saying, that I am a complete moron. So when I was angling the transmission, I was getting ready to pull the pressure plate off, and check that out. I used that bolt because I couldn't get into the cylinder head hole like I did on this side. And I have oh my God, I'm an idiot. I just spent 4 hours trying to put in a bell housing that I couldn't see that I had the engine stood in there. Oh, I'm a moron. Anyway, the good news is I think I have a good chance that I can put this all back together without having to worry about a pilot bearing. Pretty sure that stud is about the 1/2 inch that I was trying to get out of everything. Oh, if I was still drinking. Maybe you guys already know this, but one thing that I found pretty darn useful, I was using that Klein angle finder, and I was like, well, if I get these angles the same, this thing should slip in a lot easier. So I've been adjusting the engine hoist deal up on top of the engine bay. So I can change this angle, whatever I need to. And then if I lower the jack, then I can bring that transmission angle up. And so, I've been kind of playing around with it just to get the two kind of lined. And that has made the multiple transmission installs that I've been playing that was never going to work until I removed the bolt on the bell housing. But I thought that was kind of cool. Is that, when you're underneath the car, you really can't get a good angle, or underneath the truck, vehicle, whatever. You can't really get a good, step back like you can when it's on a lift and see what the angle of the dangle is. So anyway, thought that was kind of cool. Thought I'd mention it. All right. So with with that bolt removed, I was able to get the transmission in, and I also hooked a ratchet strap to the clutch fork, and hook it to like a trans mount back here that was still attached to the transmission, and I could ratchet strap it in, and I could get it to a point where the clutch would release and I could spin it freely. So I believe that should have moved the whole shaft of the transmission, which means that it's spinning in the pilot bearing just fine. So I also spun the front crank bolt on the front of the engine, and I could get it to spin like it was before. I could hear the compression of the engine. I don't hear any crazy noises, so I'm calling this good for now. I did get the cross member in, and that's why the jack is free. So I didn't want that, because I basically had it with just one bolt on the back of the head holding the engine angle, and I didn't like that. I wanted to get that done as quickly as possible. So that's done. I'm done for the evening. And then I'm going to try to button up everything tomorrow. I think I can get it done. I mean, I just basically have to put the shifter lever back together and grease everything, hook up some wires, hook the battery up, hook the starter up, drive shaft. I mean, it's not a small list, but it's not like putting in the transmission. So I am moving forward, and I'm very happy about that. All right, so I got all the bolts in for the transmission cross member. That thing is a massive, heavy thing. It's almost as heavy as the transmission. And I need to paint the bottom. Or clean and paint. And I also got the clutch set up, all bolted back in. So next I didn't want to fasten this down if I had to move the transmission a little bit to get the clutch assembly on. So I'm going to mount install the transmission bolts, the transmission mount bolts right there. And drive shaft needs to be done, and the starter. And then I think I could start putting in some fluid and think of what else. I'm getting close to where I could start it. Oh, I do want to hook up an oil pressure gauge. There wasn't one on here, and I did prime the oil pump, but I'd like to see that and maybe run it without the coil wire connected so that I can see pressure build up before I start it. I don't want to ruin the motor because of something else stupid I did on this project, but I am getting close, and I am super excited. Okay, so I got everything buttoned back together, got everything buttoned up. Added the oil filter, the oil, topped it off, or added oil. I don't see any leaks. Check brake fluid. Got most of my tools underneath. I got the seat put back in. I know I'm not done with the floor. I understand that's... All right, try it again with the light. So yeah, I do have the cover still off of it, but I got the seat installed, and then I installed a oil pressure gauge. Didn't have one before. I don't even think the idiot light was connected for the dash light. So glad I got the oil pressure gauge hooked up. All right, so you could see in the video I didn't leave the neighborhood, and that's because the drum brakes, like, I'm losing fluid, so I know there's a leak somewhere. Also, the drum brakes are just not consistent. I mean, I had them on the Fury, and it kind of felt sketchy then too. I know I drove a grain truck that had drum brakes and 30,000 pounds, 40,000 pounds in it, and it worked just fine, but these just don't feel right. So Cam gave me a conversion kit when I purchased the truck. So I think that's next on the list. I want to get this thing running and driving. I think the things that I need to get inspected are the disc brakes up front. Well, I don't necessarily need those, but it's just smart to have that done. I did notice when I was under there a couple holes in the exhaust from the header back, or the collector, you know, because like it has it collects from both sides and puts it out one pipe. I like it being nice and quiet. It's running great. I just love this truck. But there were some holes from their back, and Cam had originally was planning on using some of these. Now those mufflers, the rectangles, are from the Barracuda and will be included on the Fury, but there's those over there that he was originally going to use and make one pipe going out the back. And I think I'm going to do that as well. I might use the existing muffler because that's nice and quiet, but the pipe, they put it on an old pipe, and so it literally is paper thin with holes. So also I need to install a windshield washer fluid. I'm pretty sure for state inspections I need windshield washer fluid. I bought a bag on Amazon that's kind of like a universal bag with electric motor. I wanted to use the original one, but the prices for those things are ridiculous. I'm not going to pay, $150 for a 50-year-old foot pump that looks in worse condition than the one I got. So if I can fix the one I got, then I will do that, but that's a little later. I want to get it inspected. I want to be able to drive it. I want to be able to haul stuff. I've got stuff I need to haul off, engine parts and basic junk. And this is the truck to do it in. So big step, but next is to finish the rear end on the Fury and get that running and driving.